Hello and welcome to the Best of British Business campaign, our series that explores the organisations shaping how the future of business and technology shapes our world. Boards do what they've always done. They strengthen performance. They look for better methods. They invest to move ahead. Today, that focus centres on AI, data and cloud. These technologies now sit close to the core of business ambition. Yet, the challenge is not new. Emerging technologies rarely arrive with clear guidance. Proven applications take time. Business models settle slowly. In that gap, investment can move ahead of understanding. Tools are selected before purpose is defined, and decisions lose their footing. There is, however, a more disciplined approach, one that aligns intent, structure, and investment from the outset. How? Well, this is what we're going to be discussing today with James Cross, CEO and founder of Colibri Digital, and Simon Bateman, CEO of Recognised Bank. Good morning.
Good morning.
So James, I'd like to start with you. Why is AI now a board issue rather than just a technical one?
So for me, it's FOMO, the fear of missing out. I often talk about this analogy around the Empire State Building. You look at the New York skyline at night, you see all these beautiful tall buildings, you look at these beautiful tall spires, and people say, I want that beautiful spire that's on the top of the building there. So they go off and they build this beautiful spire. But what you can't see, of course, when you stand back is all the building that's underneath it, the foundations that go with it. So they're going really, really fast to run. Boards are running really, really fast to what they see is value and actually losing sight of what the long-term strategic benefit is that they're trying to create, the long-term strategic differentiation.
What could go wrong by doing that?
So they get lost, right? They lose sight of the long-term direction that they're trying to go in. So often this board pressure builds and gets pushed down through a technical organization. And the decision-making around what to do ends up dropping down into senior engineers who end up building what is cool, what is fun, not what adds value. And they end up doing it in a silo, in isolation, in fragmentation. So then you go back up to the board level discussion and they say, we're AI enabled now. But have they actually reduced operational costs, improved productivity, or driven revenue growth? Potentially not.
Also, if you think back to when cloud became the thing,
Yep.
And if you look at the costs now of your cloud expenses on a month-to-month basis, which is only accelerating now using AI because of the compute volume, because of the amount of data being used, because of the amount of queries that are being run, the cloud costs are going through the roof. That kills businesses. If your operational costs exceed your income, it causes failure.
To the point about job losses, right? We're going to create another industry, AI FinOps, right? Because no one will know why it's costing so much. And then there'll be a whole new breed of companies that come in and help organizations manage the cost of running these things.
You're suggesting that, and you've made it very clear, that we shouldn't be just listening to the hype. We shouldn't be just jumping straight in. We should be more considered about the speed with which we adopt AI. But you're also then implying that you need that clarity. Could you maybe delve into that a little bit deeper?
Automation's been in banking for many, many years. The speed in which you can use AI to improve that automation, to accelerate that decision making. We're a specialist lender. The customers that we're lending to want a decision, they want it quickly. They want to know whether we're going to lend the money. Therefore, we can use AI to enrich that decision process, but not replace the human element, not replace the person who's actually looking at it and going, oh, that's going to catch us out, or that might have a problem. And therefore, our adoption of AI, once we've got the platform in a state where we can trust the data, we know exactly where everything is how do we enrich that decision process? How do we give certainty on that decision and give that decision quickly? AI will help us to do that.
You talked about strategies. Let's take it to the next stage. How do you translate those strategies into something more tangible?
Yeah, so we take the strategy, we take the direction, and then we distill that down into a list of discrete use cases. That is individual pieces of work, individual deliverables that have their own measurable and tangible impact. Ideally, we would start with a list of maybe 15 or 20 We would distill that down into 2, 3, maximum maybe 4 use cases that we would select for development, and we would then go and implement those one after the other in series. The idea is when you get to the end of that phase, you've got 2, 3, 4 use cases that you've selected, valued, built. You can then go back to the board and say, so this is something that is actually delivering value for your organization. Now we then need to go and scale. Once you've done those first few in series, then you can parallelize the rest and you can start to build those use cases out and scale across your organization. But you prove the value first.
Now, of course, there'll be other providers who will say they will do exactly that too. So what is it about Colibri that sets you apart, and specifically against maybe some of those larger providers?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think for us, there's a few angles here. Firstly, it's credibility. The other is, I think, also duration. We've been doing this for 10 years. Data and AI enablement is not a bandwagon that we've jumped on in the last 2 years because Sam Altman released ChatGPT, right? That was the start of the hype cycle. We've been talking about it for 10 years prior to that. And actually, AI itself is not a new technology. It's just become very exciting because some of these recent developments. So we've got that credibility. We've got those customer testimonials. And perhaps most importantly, we've got a methodology to deliver value from a concept to actually get to the point where that value is realized. And we've got a number of use cases and customers that we can point at to say, we've done it, it works.
But going back 10 years when you set the business up, it was very much focused on data,
Yes.
quality of data.
Yes.
And that's why I've worked with you twice before, which is the fundamentals around the foundations of data, which is critical to any implementation of AI. That's the foundations of the business.
Yep. And it hasn't changed, right?
No,
it's still,
100%.
It's still all about data. And it's the thing that everybody misses or is often missed. Back to the analogy about the Empire State Building, the data platform is the foundation and the building underneath. The AI is the shiny on the top that everyone focuses on. But without those foundations, again, which is the data, it doesn't work. And that is what we've been doing since we started the company.
Let's just take a step back for a second, because I want to look at Recognise Bank in particular, Simon. And what was your situation before you brought Colibri in?
Recognise had a number of iterations of the data platform, and it had evolved over a period of time, and there wasn't a set data strategy that had gone through the different iterations of the business. The challenge that we faced at Recognise Bank was the data platform had evolved over a number of years. A number of iterations had come along, and we started out on this project as fixing and resolving the data platform. So it was a stepping stone to get to the point where we could deliver AI as part of our business strategy. And working with Colibri, we sat down and looked at the challenge that we had. They came in and audited what we had in place and the governance frameworks, the control metrics, etc. we had around the data, to ensure that if they were going to provide us this capability, that it was going to be quality data that it was based upon. We kicked off the conversation around what is it we wanted. And we wanted that foundational data platform in place. So when different opportunities, we go through our 5-10-year strategy, we had confidence that what we were building that and what we were plugging that into was going to make a difference. We needed to set those foundations. And I know I keep referring to them, but they are critical to the success of any AI implementation and enablement. We set out working with Colibri on putting the right governance, the right control frameworks in place, getting an understanding of the data lineage, understanding where everything was coming into a central repository, that we could then work with the different business areas to say, look at all this data we've got. Look at all this information we can now use to help with those decision points, to help with the speed of decision. You can now auto-populate documentation. You can now improve your decision-making to a level of efficiency that actually, if we take this product over here and plug this into the process that we've got, we can speed it up. And I think that's the key point. AI isn't the only strategy. It's a complementary strategy towards achieving better outcomes and better business returns.
Yep.
And we needed to work with a company to help us lay those foundations to get us into a position where if we identified an AI product that could benefit us, then we could use it confidently, and our speed to deliver that product was going to be much faster than it would have been on the previous set of platforms that we had. And that's basically what we're using it for, is to bring that level of foundations in place in order to accelerate our growth and our scale.
So talk a little bit more about that. You've got those foundations in place, you've accelerated that scale. What did that look like in your case?
From a specialist lending perspective, our customers want decisions. They need a decision, they want clarity in that decision, they want it quickly. Using AI as an enabler to support in that decision-making process means we can go back quicker, we can offer a decision, we can give that level of certainty. Whereas before, without the level of sophistication we had within the data platform, it was down to the individuals looking and assessing the information from different points. Centralizing that into a core repository, in a core platform, means we go to the same place every time. We use the same decision points. We use the same pieces of information, and we know there's a level of consistency within that.
And most importantly, you've got confidence in the quality of the data that's feeding into that decision-making process.
Yeah.
So James, what responsibility do you take on when you start working with clients?
I think it's ultimately we give clients the confidence that they're going to get to the outcome that they desire at the point where they first engage with Colibri. So our responsibility really is helping organizations like Recognize get to the point where they can say, yes, okay, now we can do this on our own, right? We want to enable and equip businesses to be able to carry on this journey on their own once we've stopped working with them. So it's helping them with that decision-making framework, the strategy. It's helping them with the foundations, which we've obviously talked about. And it's helping them with the methodology to then identify the next iteration of use cases, the next generation of use cases, have the confidence to address them on their own, to be equipped with the skills that they need to implement them on their own.
They got us to a point where the fundamentals, the foundations were there. And now we're working with them to look at, right, what do we do next? So how do we now take this further? How do we look at technology differently, and how do we look at the service that we provide to our SME customers? How do we provide that differently? And last year was very much a case of relaying the foundations and then enabling for scale and growth. The platform that's been built now with Colibri will accelerate certain aspects of our drive for efficiencies, our drive for consistency, and our drive for clarity on decisions and outcomes for the customers.
And what does success look like for your SME clients?
I think it comes back to that certainty of the platform, that certainty of the foundational platform of data. We've engaged with Colibri in order to build out that foundation in order to support the scale and growth that we want this year. And it's getting the platform in such a state of, to the point that was raised earlier around the confidence in that data, the guarantee quality of that data that enables us to consider different business opportunities that can then support the strategy, that can then support developing different opportunities.
I think for us, often we get brought in by boards rather than individual technical leaders in the business, or by investors even. So for us, success is, okay, you've come in with this hypothesis that we need to be AI enabled. For us, I think that first tick is, okay, you've got 2, 3, 4 use cases in production, delivering real change, real value, meaningful value, something that can go back to a board presentation or a shareholder meeting, and you can point at it and say, look what we've done, this is the change that is delivered. And it's the organizational and the technical maturity to then be able to grow from there. I think that's what success looks like for us with customers.
And is there also an element of it's not all about cost savings?
Yes.
And that's the key thing, that AI is just not about cost savings. It's about efficiencies. It's about enablement. Productivity.
We've talked a lot about AI at board level and the rationale for bringing AI in and for bringing organizations like you, Colibri, in to help. For our audience watching the interview today, what would you really like them to remember, to take away from this that is critically important when considering AI at board level?
Focus on the long-term value that you're trying to create and how you're trying to get there.
The outcome is critical. Defining the outcome of how that outcome is going to support your business development, your business strategy.
That was Simon Bateman from Recognize Bank and James Cross from Colibri Digital.